GameGrumps! And I'm the GameGrumps!
Hey, welcome to another edition of I Talk About a Bunch of Projects I Never Made. This one's probably going to be about a couple games, because Plasmosis was probably the most robust of them. So this next one, that's sort of the next level of robust, I was also working on with Afro Ninja Sean, who is an incredible programmer, coder, super awesome to work with, and we were working on something that I think was going to be a much better game in general. It was called Vlad the Impaler. It was sort of a Castlevania clone. So here's like this was the first stage that I did the art for. The reason the background isn't synced up is because it was parallaxing, so that one didn't move as much, and this one moved a lot. You'll notice there's a spear coming out of the ground. That was supposed to be like the first sort of tutorial moment of the game that teaches you what impaling is. So basically the idea behind the game was oh, there's a little gargoyle over here. The idea behind the game was, let me check these out real quick. So you play as Vlad the Impaler, and you're going through the Ottoman Empire, just trying to get to your brother Radu, which is all sort of historically accurate based on what we know, sort of. So here's Vlad. Actually, let me load up the FLA of this. So that's Vlad. He was sort of like Simon Belmont, so he had two functions, right? He had slashing, so his sword isn't in there. That's his sword attack right here, the slash graphic. So it's kind of Strider-esque. But you could slash, which was your main source of damage. It was kind of quick. And then there was impaling. So you would impale, and it had a huge range. So the idea was you do damage by slashing, but then they would go into a mode not unlike Doom, the recent Doom, or maybe even like Mighty Number 9, where they're impalable. And then when you impale them in that mode, then they will die, but you will take something from them, and then it will add to like a 3-layered combo. So like you would have GUI on like the top, like right here, that would be like, let's say, let me just draw it out. So there'd be like 3 boxes, right? So you would impale, and then it would go and go up to whatever, and then based on whatever that enemy has inside them, whether it's like, you know, thing A or thing B, and it's specific per the enemy, then that would go up here, and then boom, you would have A lined up. If you've ever played Shatterhand, you know where this is going. But so the idea is like, you want to kill enemies and impale them in a certain order so that you create the combo that you want to create. So like A will then get you like a flame sword or something, right? But if you get A, then that'll make you like jump really high or something, you know? So the levels would be set up in such a way where the enemies that would be around would be able to sort of give you that ability for the area that you need to get through. And most of it would be like, you could just get through it anyway, but, you know, there would be certain like secret areas or alternate paths that you could go down that would require you to have these sort of temporary upgrades. And then I wanted to have parts that were like particularly hard, where you'd have to like sort of think about it and then like go back a little ways and then make sure to keep the ability that you had, right? So this was my Vlad the Impaler design. I loved working on this because it was super, I mean, just the fucking pure anime of it all, but also giving it like a little bit of a cartoony sort of bounce. Yeah, so that was him jumping up and then falling. So when he falls, his little tags go up and he puts his leg out, and it's real cool. And then there's him ducking. Let's see what else we got here. We got a ducking slash. Oh, a jump slash. That's pretty simple. And then a crouch slash. Oh, so that you can actually see the graphic there for a sec. Right on. So that was those are the main animations for Vlad, which I adored working on this game. Like, it was so much fun. Oh yeah, I wanted to make his little tassels like animate or something, but it was a little too over the top. But so Radu, let's find the sketches here. Yeah, so Radu was his brother, and that's true to the lore of Vlad the Impaler. And I made him like a crab dude, and I'm not sure why I did that. I just was sort of interested in that idea. So I made his first form sort of like gross and crabby, and then his second form where he gets like crab legs. And this was some stuff that I was designing in terms of like how he moves and stuff. Like, he reaches out and grabs you with his claw hand, and then he throws you up in the air, and then smashes you on the ground. And this he bucks up and kicks you with his front legs and stuff. But he was going to be like the last boss. He was going to be a big deal to fight once you got to him. And then basically it was just a matter of coming up, for me at least, it was a matter of coming up with ideas for enemies. And that was just like an unbelievable amount of fun, interesting shit. And let me load up the PSD first so you guys can see just what you know what, actually I think this is the same file. Yeah, it is. So here's a bunch of enemy designs that I was coming up with for this for this game, right? So we had like your typical soldiers, your typical Ottoman soldiers, and they got like a little scythe. And then I had like a werewolf guy, and I think this was the design I ended up liking. It was a little more menacing. This guy like throws knives. He jumps up in the air and throws knives. I actually have an animation of that I'll show you in a second. This is my Gatororpian. I didn't know how to what to call him, but like, so he walks on twos, and then he stabs you with his tail and then throws you in his mouth. So I think he was going to be like an instant kill type of enemy. And then this was inspired by, I was playing a lot of Left 4 Dead at the time, so this was inspired by the White Witch or whatever, the Crying Witch. So he would be like really scared, and then once you got close to him, he'd be like, "Bah!" and then he'd just like jump after you really fast, right? Now these guys, I adored these guys, and I don't have animations of them, so I'll have to describe them in this part right here. I called them the back scratchers. So this was like the smaller version of it, and this was the larger version. So like there would be Ottoman soldiers everywhere, right? But once they die, their bodies would stay there, and then these dudes would be crawling on the ceiling. And once they found a corpse, they would, like for example, this guy would run his tentacles down and then rip his arms out and then jump on his body on top of his head and then sort of use his body as a surrogate. So now he is walking around with his body. Yeah, there's him hanging upside down. So he would use that body, and he would have like these super long arms now. So it was sort of like a Crimson Head from Resident Evil, the remake, like just a harder version with more abilities than the typical Ottoman soldiers. And then this guy was like the way bigger version of it, where he basically only needed the legs to move around, because he could sort of only like pinch up and down. But he has like these little tentacles that are going into his legs to control them and shit. Like, it's super gross. But once he did that, he could like run and like come after you. And I think I wanted to make him like a mini boss or something. But super fucking menacing. It's too bad I never really got around to doing that. These guys would jump up and down and throw these like boomerang things that would fly around. These guys would just fly around. There's these bats that would stab you when you came close. They would drop down really fast and stab you. These things were just like these unsettling things where they would walk around and they'd shoot fire out of their mouths. But then when they sort of got close or sensed you were nearby, they would roll into a ball every so often and like run towards you and bounce off walls and stuff. I get this hammerhead guy who would just run back and forth really fast. This guy leaps from side to side, would crawl on the walls, and he's like two-sided. So he's got like a mouth on this end and a mouth on that end. So like he's like grabbing onto the wall, and then when he sees you, he'll just like jump to the other side, right? He'll turn into this and jump to the other side, cling, and then he's basically like this on the other side. And then I got this guy who's just this big lumpy doughy blob, and he would walk around, and if he got close to you, I actually don't think I ended up, I made him a lot fatter and gooier, but his mouth would get big like this, so this is him, and he would suck you up like Kirby, and try to eat you. Yeah, here's the fatter version. He just looks so pathetic, like, but he would spit out balls that would bounce, right? So he'd be like, and it would be like boink, 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 boink. So you'd have to get close to him to attack him, and then if you got close enough, he would start to try to suck you in. So you'd have to get away. So those are some super fun enemies, and I did some yeah. So here's a lot of animations for these. Let's see if these like translate. Yeah. So this was the bat I was talking about. So he'd fly over you and then try to stab at you, just drop down. So so this was the dagger throwing Ottoman soldier. So he could jump and throw daggers, and he could be on the ground and throw daggers. I wanna. Oh, here we go. This is perfect. Right on. Okay, this is totally perfect. Yeah. So this is normal Ottoman soldier. Right here. So he just kind of looks around every so often, and then you got. What's going on here? Why is this being so lame? Okay. Maybe I need to close some of these. So I think my computer can't take all this data. Yeah, let's get rid of Miss Ozma stuff. That was last episode. So this was like a high slash, so he would come at you at a high angle, and you'd have to duck under it. This was a low slash, you'd have to jump over it. So super simple stuff, and then just like a real simple walk cycle. He would just kind of lurch around. A really messy walk cycle, to be honest with you. So this guy was my absolute favorite. I loved animating him, and just all this, just how he jiggles. And I remember I set a walk cycle of this to Christina Aguilera's "Dirty," and I don't know if we could do that on the on this show, because we might get copyright strike for that. But it was just like, oh, I'm coming out, or something like that. And it was just perfectly synced up to the beat of it. But he just got a sassy walk. So this is him spitting. He shoots balls that bounce off the ceiling, and sometimes they would bounce like this. And then what is this? Oh, that's when he would try to suck you up. So so that was really fun to animate. I love that guy. And that's just when he's big and fat and he's got you, and you're trying to fight out. You know, I don't even remember this. That's great. You're trying to fight your way out. Oh, man. Good stuff. Then there's Vlad. That was there for size comparison. So then we got the Gator Orpian, which I fucking loved. Just a fun concept. There's him walking. He sort of waddles side from side. I remember it was fun to sort of like do the secondary animation on his tail, although I would do it definitely differently now. This is very messy because I was trying to get a bunch done in a short amount of time. So yeah, he would sting you, and then he would sort of grab you and then flip around. I don't know the logic there. I guess that makes sense. He's just gotta like unhinge his shoulders or something, and then he would throw you in and then take a bite out of you, and then I think he would throw you back. I think I originally wanted him as like a one-hit enemy, but I thought that would be too menacing, and then that's him just turning around. Alright. So this is that creepy thing. He walks around on these little spindly legs. Yeah, it's just very unsettling the way he walks. I just wanted him to be like this creepy thing, and I think this is him shooting stuff. Yeah. So it's very Castlevania-esque, of like the two tiers, and then he would turn into a little ball and then roll at you. So that was a gross little moment. These guys were really fun to animate because he's super bouncy. So yeah, so he would just hop on one leg for some reason. I just wanted him to look unique and strange, and that was the way I did it. So that's him, I think, turning around. And then that's him throwing it. So then it would go and come back. So And then he would stand there and not have it for like a couple of seconds. And then he would just grab it. I think that's what I did, actually. I just ran it in reverse when he caught it. And then we got this guy, who was sort of like the second-tier Ottoman soldier, and he would throw daggers, so he was just super... And they would just come straight at you, and then you had a jump attack if you got a little too close. So those were the enemies for that, and you know, I think that's not too... What was a leaper? Oh yeah, it was the thing that goes back and forth. I don't know that there was much else to this, aside from the opening stage. You know, I think the last thing I can show is I made a map of how the first stage was going to go, and it was like this super simplistic straight line map, a la the first level of Castlevania. It was just supposed to teach you like the you know, how enemies work, how impaling works. So you know, you start out here, you spawn here. There's a block on the left that teaches you to go right. Then there's a thing that you have to jump over, so that teaches you to jump. Then there's a guy who's attacking you, so you have to learn to attack him. This was a little failed because I wanted to make it so you couldn't jump over him. Or maybe you could, and then there's another spot where like you have to kill him and you can't jump over him. And then some more advanced obstacles, bats in the trees, just to give you a sense of that there's different enemies. Then I wanted to do this impale tutorial, right? So right here, I showed you earlier that opening stage, right, with the grass trail. So there's an impaler coming out of the ground. So I made it so that this would sort of impede your progress, and while you're sort of figuring out how to jump over this or get past this Ottoman guard is walking toward these impale spots that are coming out of the ground. So he comes in, and then he gets impaled. And then his little orb comes out that you can collect, right? So that's supposed to sort of teach you, like, hey man, you can impale, and that's what happens when you impale them, right? I don't know if that's the best way to do it, but that's just how I thought of it. Maybe a pit here, maybe an item that's hidden behind breakable wood, so you sort of get the idea that the environment's breakable. Another enemy, more bats and trees, so it's a little more challenging right here. And then the sort of boss of this area is just the Ottoman knife thrower, who's a little bit more difficult than a regular Ottoman guard, and then you go inside the castle. So that was the super simple Castlevania-esque, this is how you learn the game tutorial for my little Castlevania-esque game. So, hey man, I didn't expect it to go on that long, but I hope you liked me going through that, man. That was super fun to go down memory lane on that one. I've got a couple other projects that I was working on that I'll show you on the next episode. So I will see you later.